Hello everyone and welcome to the FinTech Times. My name is Tyler and I'm here at PAY360 in London talking about everything paytech related today. And now I'm joined by Thibault. How are you, Thibault?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you. Well, if you would like to tell me a bit about who you are and the company you represent?
Yeah, I'm Thibault de Barsy. I'm the General Manager of the Payments Association EU. So we are the sister association of the Payments Association, covering the 27 EU market, and we are based in Luxembourg.
Well, brilliant, thank you. So you must be an expert about everything that's happened in Europe, I hope. So I think the first question that I would like to ask you is, what is the latest paytech innovation that we're seeing from Europe at the moment?
Well, you know what has really been striking is the fact that instant payments is now getting generalized across the different EU markets. So that's a very interesting evolution. But by the way, it's not fast enough, and this is why the EU Commission has just decided or announced that they will do some legislation on it to force the hand of the market in a way to make it more easy to access, more affordable, more democratic, I guess. And this should help the industry in general. So we're looking forward to that.
Well, you mentioned a bit about regulation there. How do you think the pandemic has shaped the regulation that's being imposed on the industry today?
Well, what's interesting there is that, of course, we were lucky enough to have PSD2 before the pandemic. So it gave a fantastic framework for all the fintech companies to engage the market. And of course, with the pandemic, the proportion of online payments exploded, as well as buy now, pay later, by the way, which took a quite extraordinary market share in a very short period. So all in all, now the EBA is considering a review of the PSD2. So that's going to be super interesting because all the parties which are concerned want to express how PSD2 could be improved, and it might open the way to a PSD3, which is going to be a long process, obviously, probably a few years. But in the meantime, the regulators and especially the EBA has the opportunity to already correct some of the things that can be improved right away via what is called RTS, and that's something that the whole industry is looking forward to, I guess.
And when we talk about these regulations, what impact do you think that it's going to have on the everyday transaction?
Well, certainly more instant, more affordable. But more interestingly for us as an association is that we promote the idea that the local champions in the EU should be able to cross-fertilize and to offer their services everywhere in the EU, which is allowed and even encouraged by the EU passporting system. But practically it's not that easy because you always have some local particularities, local regulation, not necessarily on payment, but for example, local regulation on credit or consumer protection, which makes things a bit difficult. So for me, ideally, what should change is that every strong contender in the EU should be able to reach out to any consumer in the EU, wherever he is in one of the 27 EU countries.
That's a really interesting answer, and I think it goes to show just how influential these sorts of regulations are when they're imposed. In terms of the EU in more of a general area, we see so much happening right now from European paytech companies that are really changing the space, and because of that, we're seeing the continent really transform into like a leading hub of paytech, and especially regtech that's related to paytech.
Yeah.
Know? I mean, how has Europe managed to achieve this feat?
Well, I think, obviously the governments and the regulators are in general pro-business, and everyone, of course, is trying to attract younger fintechs or established players. So it's actually quite a sane environment because, as long as governments encourage those companies to grow, so that they have, for example, a license process which should not take too long, so that they have the possibility to export their services. That's really the end game. So of course you have local hub. Obviously Luxembourg, where we are, is a fantastic place to be in terms of having a strong and a very good regulator. And of course neighboring countries or Dublin and obviously Vilnius are playing a quite important role, trying to attract payment players and create local hubs. But in general, it's a very virtuous circle because it encourages the established players to go abroad, and it's a competition between the different hubs who is the best to nurture a new player.
Definitely, and I think you've definitely hit everything on the head there, really, with the sort of the collaborative approach. You mentioned, that there are going to be innovations. We talked about PSD3 maybe making an appearance, and that's all very good. But from your perspective, with somebody with such major industry insight, do you think that there's any form of paytech where RegTech where the regulation is falling behind?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, for me, we know what the issues have been, for example, with the current version of PSD2. Lack of standardization of the APIs. So that's an obvious one. The effects of strong customer authentication. So now we will know finally, have we reduced fraud? Have we lost business? Okay, but we'll get the answer. So that's very good. The whole industry quite agrees on what is positive and what has to be improved. And I think that the EBA, by the way, we are having a Q&A chat with the EBA this Friday. The EBA is quite responsive to those worries or those potential improvements. So yeah, that's really the idea, is that it's a continuous discussion with the EBA, with the European Commission, and for some aspects with the European Central Bank. But at least the promise of the EU, which is to have a comprehensive, harmonized framework over 27 countries, holds. That's fantastic. And this is why I think that EU will be really a perfect cradle for future champions of payments, because compared to the US, where you have very strong competitors, but you don't necessarily have the same framework, compared to Asia, where you have very strong players, but you don't have the level playing field and the rights of entry that we have in the EU. So that means that in the EU we have the perfect ingredients to have the payment champions of tomorrow.
It's sort of like the best of both worlds, really, isn't it? In that sort of way, and I can definitely see the picture that you're painting of this sort of really cultivating ecosystem that's happening in Europe at the moment. It's very interesting. Well, thank you very much, Thibault, for joining me today. I wish we could speak longer.
I will.
But I hope you enjoyed the rest of the event.
See you later.
Thank you very much.
Bye.